Hello again. I'm Steve Wright. I'm the National Public Information Officer for the Christian Emergency Network. And if we didn't scare you off in our last training session and you've come back for this advanced training, welcome back. We hope that you've taken some time to really learn some of those things we covered in our first session. And now that you have gotten some of those things down, we want to take you on into some more training and advance your knowledge. We have a couple of things that we want to be able to accomplish in this. First of all, we are going to introduce you once again to the roles and responsibilities of a public information officer relating to how you interact with the Christian Emergency Network and how they integrate into communication strategies that we have at CEN. We're going to be reviewing the PIO role. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because if you've spent any time going through the basic training, you don't need me to labor on these points, but we do want to go through them again just to familiarize ourselves and understand the groundwork from which we're going to be building on this training. We're also going to be talking this time about the response process of the PIO, and then also the information sharing and communication protocols. So first of all, let's just review for a moment or two about the PIO role. As we covered in the first one, we showed you that the CEN model begins with the church. The church is filled with Christians with a heart to help meet the needs in their community. The ReadyChurch has implemented a response infrastructure that enables their congregation to respond based on predetermined roles. So as you see in this slide, you see the people in the church, you see the ReadyChurch, and how it is going to be functioning as it deals with the situation in our communities. We also talked about the church emergency team structure. In every one of these situations, there is going to be an administration officer or somebody who is the incident commander, if you will, of any type of an emergency or crisis that would take place that your church is going to be involved in. Your role is right underneath that one again as the public information officer. It's a critical role. It's an important role, as important as it is for the safety and security officer, for the operations officer, prayer, care, share, the logistic officer, and also the finance officer. So it's very important to understand that our roles are critical in being able to get information out as things happen. Now, the things that we talk about at CEN that are the most important facets of what we are doing is that we have to network. We have to be able to establish a response group. We have to know who the response group is, and then we have to identify and develop communication avenues. These are critical aspects of what we are going to have to need to know as a PIO. The next thing we have to be able to do is to be able to prepare. And that's for us as the PIO to be able to draft messaging, generic alerts, advisories, news releases, and other media communications. We also have to be able to know how to develop an emergency operations plan, both internal and external. Internal means within our organization, external means what goes out to the community. And then we have to practice with the emergency operations procedures, with drills and tabletop exercises. And then the third aspect is that we need to know how to respond. We have to discover the emergency and God's opportunity. Anything that happens in our communities, in our churches, we have to understand that the emergency or the crisis is an opportunity for God to be able to be made known to our community and to the people within our own congregation. We see those as opportunities. We have to be able to assess unique situations and to be able to fit it in with the EOP. We have to determine the assets that we have and the capability we have to use those assets in any emergency. And then we have to communicate a response according to the EOP and IC decision. So the response process of the PIO is where we are going to start in this session. This is where we need to really start to get down and understand the advanced training in this role we have as public information officers. And at the end of the session, what we're hoping you're going to be able to come away with is that you're going to be able to describe the CEN response process and the role of the PIO within that overall process. The CEN response plan is a proven course of action to take following an incident in which your ReadyChurch, ReadyCity will be able to activate the response plans. This response plan should outline the steps your leadership team will take to initiate your ReadyCity or ReadyChurch response plan. The role of the public information officer becomes very active during an incident. In non-activation times, the PIO role is primarily focused on developing relationships with local media and communicating within the local ReadyChurch or ReadyCity internal network. But during an activation, the PIO role becomes more focused on the external communication, but we still have to maintain an important communication role with the internal network as well. This slide shows the CEN PIO tasks that should be done on an as-needed basis. The first 24 to 48 hours is the most critical time, and then we also have to have a framework for information that needs to go out on an as-needed basis. Again, that form is available on the CEN website. The scope of the news media. There is an international news media, there's a national, and there's also a non-English language media. We need to be aware of all three of these because at some point, no matter what will happen, we may have to be able to communicate in all three of these settings. Now remember this important point as well. The local media is a key partner in emergency public information efforts, and local news very often can go national in a split second. Now, depending on the size and the significance of an incident and what happens in a community, it could be covered by the news media from across the nation and around the world, including the non-English language media. And it all starts with a local news event. However, which is one of the reasons that the relationship between the PIO and the local news media is so important, and local news again can go national in just a heartbeat. The benefits of working with the local media include developing an understanding of what the local reporters are looking for. Do these reporters have an agenda? Are they fair? You need to know these things ahead of time before any crisis comes up and you have to start dealing with these reporters. It's important for us as PIOs to develop a rapport with local reporters. Now this means that you cease to become just another spokesperson and become a person. The reporters tend to be more positive or at least more balanced, which results in a better opportunity to tell your side of the story. When reporters see that you consistently provide the requested information that they want or need and or story ideas to local reporters, they are more likely to cover the positive actions of your agency. And positive coverage is like advertising and leads to a better public image. Reporters have a better understanding of your organization's issues and programs if you are a good PIO, filling in the blanks for them in any particular given situation. Now, the news media's role in public safety. The news media is the organization's link to the public before, during, and after a public safety incident. The traditional news media paint the image of the incident response in the eyes of the public. They are the ones that will create the perception of the agency and their response to the incident, and the perception is reality to the public. In the course of an incident's life cycle, media attention usually follows this procedure. There is the initial response that they will provide. This is where the reporters will rush to the scene to capture and report the basic facts of the event. Stories typically do not require much investigative reporting at first when they show up on the scene. The continuing story. That's the breaking news stage may or may not have passed as new challenges emerge. For example, media turn to covering the repercussions of an event on the populace, which may include a shortage of food or of housing after a hurricane or transportation problems that would follow after a bridge collapse. They are investigative at this point. They're going to start to dig deeper to get more information in those stories. And reporting can also be and keep a story in the news. If the focus turns to a who's at fault question, the reporting is going to start to dig deeper and will keep the media in the public's interest for a longer period of time. Then the next stage is a diminishing life cycle of that news story. The story ideas come from reporters in the field or from us as a PIO. Examples would include profiles of a first responder or a disaster victim. Stories can also take on an analytic approach, looking for deeper answers as to why something happened, for example. And then recognition. This would be an anniversary story that falls into this category and can offer opportunities for us as PIOs to get our story out again about our organization and our response to any emergency situation. Again, this is very important to remember and understand that we are the ones who have the capability of framing how a reporter is going to take the information that we provide and disseminate that to the public. If we allow them to take it and do it on their own, then they are going to have possibly a whole different view. But when they come to us and they trust us as somebody who can get information to them that is reliable, then we have the ability to be able to frame the story not only for them, but for the people who are going to read that. So where does the news come from? Today, anyone with a cell phone that takes pictures can become a reporter. All you have to do is watch the evening news at any given time of the week. If there's an accident on the freeway, reporters can't get out to those accidents very quickly, but a person with a cell phone who is traveling on the freeway can collect video and be able to get that over to a news organization very, very quickly. So what is the challenge for the PIO as a result of this? Our initial actions. When we come upon a situation, if we're involved in something, we have to be able to assess that situation. We have to be able to consider our resources. We have to establish contact with other agencies and their PIOs. And we have to be able to keep leadership apprised as things are happening. So the quick assessment of the situation that determines the possible public affairs impact is we as Emergency Operations Center can best produce a source of initial information. Then we need to be able to answer questions. So what is the situation? What happened and when is where we want to go. What is the location of the incident? Who is involved? Now this is going to include individuals and also the responding agencies to any particular situation. Next critical question, were there any injuries? Were there any deaths? Then the next question, is there already news media present on the scene? You also need to consider your resources. If you are the only public information officer, you will have to concentrate on those things that are most crucial. You have to establish contact with other agencies that are involved, and you have to be able to, again, keep your leadership apprised of what's going on. Another critical factor for us as PIOs is preparing for an interview. The first thing we have to do is identify who is the best spokesperson. That means that if your incident commander, if again, I'll use the example, if your church is a ReadyChurch and you are responding, the church is responding to a critical situation, your pastor is the incident commander, he would be the most likely person to be interviewed. So you have to identify the best spokesperson. If it is your pastor, then you need to be able to prepare them for the interview. We have to develop our objectives. We have to consider the audience that is going to be seeing or hearing the story as we are preparing that person for the interview. We have to be able to develop our message and materials. Oftentimes, we're going to need to get clearance and approval from other agencies as well. If we're going to be using somebody from their agency as a spokesperson, we have to get clearance from them before we can stick a microphone in their face. And then you need to practice or prep the spokesperson. It's very awkward for a spokesperson to go into an interview situation and have no idea the type of questions that are going to come their way. So it is our job, your job as a PIO, to be able to help prepare that person so that they feel adequately informed and able to disseminate information, to give information in a way that is clear, it is succinct, and it is understandable. So these are important concepts for us that we need to remember as we are doing our job. It is also very critical for us to be able to improve our responses. Now here's a list of don'ts for us as we go through our responsibilities, because we can improve an interview simply by not doing some things. And these are the things that we really need to be careful not to do. First of all, we are not to speculate. If you don't know the answer to something, say so. Don't offer your opinion. Don't answer hypothetical questions. A hypothetical question often begins with, what if? So don't answer questions that require you to make any assumptions. Don't respond to questions best answered by another agency, and also don't talk about other organizations unless it is to thank them for their efforts. And whatever you do, don't comment on what others have said, particularly if you haven't heard or read it yourself, because this can cause you to verify something that may not be true. That's an important aspect. Never lose your temper. You can stand your ground without losing it. And never lie. Never lie. And most importantly, never say anything to a reporter that you do not want to see in the news media, whether it's print or online. Anything you say can and will be used against you at times by certain media people. So be very, very careful. Some PIOs will argue that you can give off-the-record information to a reporter with whom you have a long-standing relationship of trust. But one thing to consider, by giving this trusted reporter off-the-record information, you may be doing a disservice. If that information gets out from another service, other media outlets will run to it, and they'll run with it, while the reporter you trusted may hold back. Well, we've covered the don'ts. Now let's cover the do's. This is what we do in improving our responses. You do know what you want to say. It is the best way to control the interview and accomplish your objectives. Know your main point and stick to it. Too many messages will be confusing to the reporter and to the public. Be positive and yet realistic. Turn a negative question around and answer it in the positive. As an example, if you are asked, why didn't the police department use search dogs immediately? Instead of saying, we didn't use search dogs earlier because, you can say something like, we have used a full range of search strategies, including search dogs. See how that turns everything around? It turns it from a negative into a positive. And be sure that you show compassion and empathy when you are communicating with the media, given any particular circumstance or situation. And this is really important too. Know when to stop. Stop talking when you've made your point. Don't speculate, and don't feel that you have to fill empty airspace. And whenever possible, summarize your key points at the end of an interview. This is something we never do. In an interview situation, as a PIO, we never say no comment. Now, why do we say no comment? Because it would imply that we are hiding something, or that we're unprepared, or that we are uninformed. So instead of that, the alternatives to saying no comment are these. First, you can refer to the visual. You can say, this matter is under investigation and that information is not available at this time. Secondly, you can say, we will provide updates as more information becomes available. Third, let me put you in contact with someone who is better able to answer that question. And then fourth, those details are covered by the Privacy Act, and I cannot discuss them, but I can give you some general information. The first two options are suitable when you are dealing with an unfolding situation. You don't want to promise updates, however, unless you plan to provide them. If you cannot answer a question but someone else can, that third response is the most appropriate. Make sure, though, that you follow up and connect the reporter with the appropriate spokesperson, or say that you are unable to do so if you can't. And then the fourth response is a good option when you are restricted from providing some information, but you can offer some general information that conveys your key message. Oftentimes, that's all a reporter may need. Now, there's transitional phrases, or what we call bridging phrases, when we're working with the media. In some interviews, you may find that you are not provided with the right question to present your message. And you can bring the focus back by building a bridge between the question and your message. Some of those transitional phrases would be, what is most important is, and that gives you the ability to go back to the main points that are important to you or your organization. Or what we should focus on is, or what the public should know is, or the point or the goal is. These transitional phrases are tools to help you build such a bridge and put the interview back on track. This brings us to session 4. This is information sharing and communication protocols. In session 4, the objectives that we're going to be looking at is at the end of this session that you are going to be able to describe the protocols CEN has in place for communicating the CEN message. Describe the recommended communication processes of the Christian Emergency Network. And then also to describe the concerns and suggestions regarding information sharing. There are communication protocols. The first protocol that we look at is to be able to establish a local media network prior to the incident. If you'll remember in the first training session, I mentioned how important it was to have everything in place before something happens, because if an incident or emergency happens, and that's when you start to decide and try and find out what I need to do, it's too late. You are going to be in so much trouble. So it's really important that you establish a local media network prior to an incident. Then we need to use the CEN template in the public writings. Again, all of these materials are online at the Christian Emergency Network. It's very simple to be able to follow these, and we strongly encourage you to download them and become familiar with them as soon as possible. And then let CEN National know so we can celebrate and communicate with you. All incidents are managed at a local level. Regarding communication, the ReadyCity, the ReadyChurch handles the local media level. And if support is desired, the national CEN team is available to help you. That's what we're here for, is to help you to succeed. We don't want you to feel like you're in this all alone, or that you don't have an answer or a place to go. Please contact us so that we can come alongside you and make you extremely successful. This PIO is going to work closely with the Inspiration Director for the ReadyChurch and the ReadyCity to develop prayer points or inspiration points that should go out with every release that CEN does. And the PIO is going to work with the Incident Commander to gather and report the facts. From the communication protocol comes the communication process. Now, preparation training is very important. This is a large part of the ReadyChurch and the ReadyCity. That is to develop ready Christians, to be ready to respond to a crisis. And we, as the public information officer, play a key role in the preparedness training. Now, press releases and advisories are very important because when incidents happen, or ReadyCity or ReadyChurches have reached goals and have something to celebrate, our job as the CEN PIO is to encourage a release and or advisory to be written. This is going to be providing a Christian response to an incident or bringing awareness to the Christian community at large as part of the role of the ReadyChurch and the ReadyCity. Blogging. This is to celebrate successes, to be able to build awareness, to establish expertise, and to communicate what your ReadyChurch or ReadyCity is doing, and all the reasons to blog is right there. CEN is providing a blogging component to their website, to our website, that will allow you to build a network and share information easily with those in our network and in your network. And then media calls. Following a press release or advisory, someone from the media may want to follow up to do an article or to get a statement regarding your release. This would fall under your role as a PIO. Now for us, CEN messaging is very vital to include in all communications from the ReadyCity or the ReadyChurch. And part of what sets CEN apart and creates its value is what we are designed to communicate regarding the incidents, and we are going to provide a biblical perspective that speaks to the issues at hand. Simply stated, we are providing a biblical response and perspective to an incident is a key role that we play as a PIO. And when we get to the CEN messaging, this is what we're going to do. We are always going to use scripture or include a prayer point, a tie-in, when we are releasing a statement or any form of communication. This is what differentiates us from any other PIO, any other organization, because the CEN messaging is very critical for us to be able to communicate. And that messaging includes to be ready, be aware, and be there. The ReadyChristian, ReadyChurch, and ReadyCity programs should always be promoted as the next step to becoming biblically ready to respond. Now, information sharing concerns and protocols. Now, the concerns that we have sometimes will involve things like separation of church and state. Sometimes it could involve terrorism or acts of violence against the church or community. And that's where protocols are very important, because information is proprietary at different times. We always have to be concerned with safety first, and there has to be a two-way trust in communications. Now, we do have some information sharing suggestions. We need to protect information to protect our congregation. We need to walk in wisdom. We need to build relationships, and we need to seek counsel. As we conclude this aspect of our training and advanced training for a public information officer, the one thing that I can't stress enough for us is that before we ever start in anything we do as a PIO, the most important thing that we can do is to begin with prayer and to end with prayer. And what I would like to do now at the end of this training is just to pray over you and to pray that God will give you and give all of us the wisdom we need for the roles that He has chosen us to be able to fill in a very critical time in our history. Father, I thank you for these people who have stepped up to become public information officers. I know, Lord, from experience it can seem overwhelming and daunting, but Father, we know that if you have chosen us for the task, you will prepare us for the task. I am just so thankful that the Christian Emergency Network has the resources and has the ability to help to train and provide everything that we need as PIOs to be able to do our job and do it well, to help our churches, our Ready churches and our Ready cities to be able to communicate truthfully and with a biblical role model, Father, to bring people to an understanding of what it means to really be prepared for any critical situation and to be ready to respond and know how to do that. Father, I just want to thank you that you have called us to this and for what you are going to do so that you may receive all the glory and the honor through our lives as we lift them up to you. In Jesus' name, amen.